I was one of the 4 constitutional law scholars that testified in 2019 in the first Trump impeachment proceeding. And I did believe then, and I still do believe, that President Trump had committed an impeachable offense in his attempting to coerce or leverage the president of Ukraine to simply announce that he was opening a criminal investigation into Joe Biden when there was no proof or any kind of credible evidence at all, but it was merely in Trump's self-interest that announcement would be made.
Abuse of power.
That is abuse of power. And if we think about it, who is the one official in the United States government who interacts with other nations' heads? Who's got that authority? Who's got that power? It's the president. I mean, I don't get to do that. Citizens typically don't get to do that, but presidents do. So how do we keep a president in check when he's, for example, inviting other countries to interfere on his behalf in an election? How do we keep that president in check? The basic answer is impeachment.
I think that's actually a pretty good jumping off point to a question about the current, perhaps most unique impeachment proceeding ever. Let's remember, in each of the previous instances where matters got to a formal impeachment inquiry, it seems there was at least some violation of law to point to. In the current impeachment inquiry of Joe Biden, there's nothing. Is there any precedent for this?
I don't think there's any legitimate precedent for what we're witnessing right now with regard to President Joe Biden. And this is not a comment on what he did as vice president or anything else. Don't rely on what I'm saying. The Republicans' own witnesses said in the first impeachment inquiry hearing back in September of last year that there was no evidence yet that Biden had committed any impeachable offense. Between that declaration and when the House as a whole authorized the impeachment inquiry, no other evidence had been introduced. And so Republicans themselves have said there's no evidence here. And in fact, the further proof of that is if you look at any hearing and listen to anybody who's talking about Joe Biden's impeachment on the Republican side, they're going to spend most of their time talking about Hunter Biden. And Hunter Biden certainly has had a troubled life. And the law will hold him accountable for whatever it is he's done or not done. The fact that Hunter Biden may have engaged in various kinds of misconduct does not mean the president is engaged. And I think right now there's a lot of hope and hatred directed at Joe Biden. I also think, at least personally, the movement to impeach Joe Biden is an attempt to gut impeachment of any seriousness, to turn it into just another stunt. And that might be just in time for Donald Trump, if he is reelected, to be able to be the president he wants to be without any concern about impeachment, because impeachment would have been destroyed in a sense before he got there.
Is impeachment workable anymore? It seems like if this is the only constitutional remedy for criminal behavior or other kinds of misbehavior by sitting presidents, and if it is a political process, and if we're in a time of extreme partisanship where seemingly no action from Donald Trump would ever go too far for Republicans to vote to impeach or convict him, and no action, no exculpatory evidence for Joe Biden would be enough to prevent an impeachment of President Biden based on total vapor. Is impeachment just a hollow media exercise now? Is it workable, or is this lost as a true constitutional mechanism?
I think we don't know the answer to that question yet. I think that there is evidence, however, that impeachment is being degraded and, again, diluted of its seriousness. I don't think there's much doubt about that. I think that if impeachment, however, is taken seriously, then it still has bite to it. So even though, for example, Donald Trump was acquitted, not just the first time, but the second time in an impeachment trial, note that 7 Republicans, the largest number ever, voted to convict a president of their own party after that second trial. And so you had a majority of the Senate voting to convict a president of the United States, or a former president of the United States. Add to that the fact that when you look at all the statements that came from Republican senators, and for that matter, all the senators after the second trial, you have at least 2/3 condemning Donald Trump's conduct, including a speech by then Minority Leader Mitch McConnell excoriating Trump and saying Trump is responsible for all of that misconduct. That all suggests to me impeachment still had bite. Very few people come into the Oval Office hoping they'll get impeached. It's something, it's most important, most potent, I think, as a curve against impeachment, making presidents think twice, if not longer. But if impeachment becomes a joke, then we just have that much less to protect us, the American public, from the misconduct of our highest ranking officials.
In fact, you start your chapter on the future of presidential impeachment by saying that presidential impeachments are stress tests for the Congress, presidency, American people, and Constitution. It seems like we are failing those stress tests right now, but you're saying there's some hope. You're saying there's a chance.
Yeah. I teach constitutional law, and that's an act of optimism. I think, if you come into the building every day as I do and try and teach students, and I think I still have some hope because, at least to the present, Joe Biden has not been impeached yet. Up until the present, impeachment really has tainted a presidency. I think one reason why Donald Trump wants Joe Biden impeached is not just to hurt Biden politically, but Trump wants to dilute the mark of impeachment. That the scarlet eye, I suppose, the bad letter that has been imposed on him. And so he can't do that by acting in accordance with the law, but he can do that by undermining impeachment and wielding it against his political enemies to such a point that impeachment itself becomes just another political weapon. That is not what the framers thought. And for anybody that respects what the framers did and talks about original meaning, you will not find anywhere that impeachment should be a joke or should be used as a political weapon.
We've never had someone so transparently corrupt in his abuse of power, attempting a coup as Trump. What's the one thing that you wish readers and the American people in general will understand better about impeachment and take away from the reading of your book?
I think one thing that people could do is when they look at a circumstance involving impeachment, particularly presidential impeachment, take the political parties and the name of the president out of the equation and ask yourself, okay, is there reason for us to do an inquiry here? Is there serious misconduct? We don't know, which party this person belongs to. We don't know that person's politics. We just know about this possible and perhaps established evidence of misconduct. That's the question we should be asking ourselves. And when people seek to use impeachment, as I think it's being used right now against Joe Biden, solely for political purposes, it's not going to be just impeachment that loses. It's going to be another institutional loss, another institutional guardian, so to speak, of our democracy is going to be dismantled. Take, for example, what current Speaker Mike Johnson has said. Mike Johnson said right before the full House vote on opening an impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden, Johnson said and I'm paraphrasing to some extent, he's the most corrupt person ever in the United States. Now, by the way, right before that, he said he wasn't going to prejudge it. But ask yourself this question. If he thinks that Joe Biden is the most corrupt politician in the history of the United States, how does he manage not to identify any misconduct at all by Donald Trump? Donald Trump has been indicted for more than 90 felonies. Donald Trump, the evidence that supported the first impeachment is on tape. It's on video. The evidence supporting the second impeachment is on tape. It's on video. And yet, as far as Mike Johnson is concerned, and I assume his Republican allies, will just look the other way. That is an indictment, not of impeachment, but it's an indictment of their credibility. And I think that's what we have to be able to rise to be able to say. I'm not trying to argue for the Democrats or the Republicans. I'm arguing for the importance of the U.S. Constitution. And the way in which I think we can best do that is don't ask whether or not President X or Y should be impeached. Ask whether or not the president should be impeached, regardless of party, regardless of name. And what's the actual credible proof of it?